I've been learning Laravel for a few weeks now, and recently I've had a pleasure of Dockerizing my Laravel application. And as with all PHP apps, it turned out to be quite complicated. My issue was that I didn't want to use some classic PHP hosting. Instead, I wanted the app to be cloud native because I kind of like to be in full control of everything, and I don't want to run some weird bash scripts to deploy PHP files via SFTP like in the olden days. So I tried to find some tutorials, and it turned out that most of them show how to do that using two containers, one to run PHP-FPM and one to run a web server like Nginx or Apache. But I didn't want to use this approach with two containers either. The problem with this approach, in my opinion, is that it's not easy to deploy the final app to the cloud. And most of the times you have some Kubernetes cluster with already configured Nginx ingress, and you don't want to spend so much time tinkering your production ingress for your single PHP app. Or you might want to deploy your app to services like Google Cloud Run, where you don't really have much control over the way Google Cloud redirects traffic to your container. You just deploy containers. And actually, one of the goals of containerizing apps is to have self-contained apps, meaning that a simple docker run command should be sufficient to run the whole app. So to summarize, this is what a rather problematic architecture looks like, and its downsides are that it's harder to deploy and to scale. The app is not self-contained, and because of that, it requires more configuration to deploy, and it's harder to create a reproducible environment. And here's what an ideal architecture looks like, in my opinion. You have just a single container containing both the PHP app and Nginx, and its advantages are that it can be deployed and scaled more easily. It's self-contained, making it also simpler to run by just running a single docker run command. I think the only downside to this approach is that you don't get to scale Nginx and PHP separately anymore. But let's be real, how often is this an issue? So honestly, I think this architecture is suitable for most use cases, and I also find it just more enjoyable to work with. Now, when it comes to creating a Docker file for this architecture, you basically have three possible approaches. You can use PHP-FPM as the base and install Nginx there. You can use Nginx as the base and install PHP there, or you can take an existing open source image that already solves this problem, and this is actually what I did. I found this nice image that supports a lot of stuff out of the box, including some features specifically for Laravel. As you can see, you can specify environment variables here. It's really easy to use and doesn't require a lot of configuration. So let me finally show what my Docker file looks like using this image. The Docker file is split into two stages. In the first stage, I'm using this Node.js image to build the CSS and JS assets. Nothing special going on here. In the second stage, I use that nice image I was talking about. Here I specify the working directory, which is the standard working directory for Nginx. Then I copy everything in the image. After that, I install the PHP dependencies. And here I allow the app to write in these two directories. You might not need the second line. I need it only because I'm using Livewire with Laravel. After that, I copy the assets that were created in the previous stage into the public build directory. Again, another line you might not need. I only need it because I'm using Livewire. As far as I remember, it generates Livewire assets. Yeah. And here's probably the most important line. Here we specify where the index.php file is located. As you can see in Laravel, it's not located in the root of the project. Instead, it's located in this public directory here. So long story short, this is what the final application looks like when I build and run it. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.